How do you end your pitch deck and ask your audience to take the next step? Let's find out. All right, let's talk about action, because in many cases, unless you ask, people are not likely to take action. So on the last slide of your presentation, you want to guide your audience to take the next step. What do you want them to do after they read your pitch deck? Or what do you want them to do after they hear you live presenting your pitch deck presentation? Now, once again, what you want them to do might vary depending on who you are talking to. Now, if you're talking to investors, the initial conversation would be book a meeting, because usually what would happen is you would send them a simplified version of your pitch deck in a PDF format or a link. So they still don't know you. They just want to know if this idea makes sense. So in that case, you just want to invite them to book a meeting. You can't ask for the money right away. Nobody's going to be giving you money unless they've met you in person, or at least they've seen some of your team and they know a little bit more details about your project. So it could be book a meeting. That could be the call to action. If you're speaking in person in front of investors and they're already there in the room with you, then you don't want to say book a meeting. It could be right away you need to get to business. So in that case, you might just be in invest now. So you have to let them how much you want and how you plan to use it as well. That is very important. Now, if you're talking to the market, that could be a contact us, a book a call. If you're a consultant, subscribe, order now, buy now, become a sponsor, become an affiliate. Really, there are many different calls to action that you could be using your pitch deck for. So depending on who you're talking to, you get to customize that last slide. And if you're talking to your internal teams, then you need to be telling them what specifically they need to do to help you bring your vision into reality. So you could be sharing your strategy with them and then asking them, well, based on my strategy and these goals, what goals do you need to do to help us reach these targets? So it could be that they are helping you with the implementation plan. So you're inviting them to either provide tactics, to provide more information, to be doing more research, to be doing the implementation as well. Or it could be personal goals. You invite them, okay, well, here are the company goals. Now I want you to set personal goals of how you are going to help me deliver this target for the market. So really your action item for this section is to come up with a call to action slide, and depending on who you're talking to, that action might vary. Now at a very high and simple level, you probably already seen so many of these slides, and it's usually the ending of any website or any conversation. It's the simple contact us. So you can just have, for more information, contact us, and you'll put the contact details. So you're going to find many slides on the market that have that layout, so you can model some of them. Some people call it connect. So really it's the same thing. Connect, get in touch. That's also the same thing. So you'll find many templates depending on the personality of your brand. You get to use whatever words you like, and you can share as much information. It could be a simple website or as much details as you can on the phone, address, email, and things like that. Now, if you're talking to your market, of course, there are many different calls to action. So I'm going to just showing you some samples here. You can adjust that to fit your needs. It could be become a member. So if you're having a conversation and the final call to action is become a member, you can share them some steps and guide them to where they could log in to become a member, or maybe go to the back of the room where they could become a member. So you have to tell them where specifically they can go to become a member. It could be order now. So if you're using your pitch deck as a catalog for suppliers to order, you will guide them where they can order now. It could be about an affiliate program. You're inviting people to become affiliates for your brand. So it could be, let's work together, learn more about our affiliate program, guide them where specifically can they learn more. It could be about a sponsorship opportunity. So you're guiding people to become sponsors at your event or some kind of a project as well. So that it doesn't necessarily have to be about a sales conversation. It could be about a sponsorship agreement. Now, what about if you're seeking investment money? So if you're talking to bankers, financiers, or people who are going to be investing in your business, then you might need to share a little bit more details about how you plan to use that money. So many people call that use of funds. Now, some people like to create a separate slide for it. It's called a use of funds slide. And some people like to combine it with the contact us page. So I'm going to show you different variations, and you get to decide how you plan to introduce that conversation. So here's one sample example example where you can say we are raising a seed round of 500,000 for 10%. So you're very specific of how much you need and what you're planning to give in return. And then you have a chart to show the percentage of how you plan to use that money. Now that chart can be very simple, but be prepared, because if you're talking to investors, they might want to ask you for details. So you might have to have that in the appendix section to share some of the breakdown of why did you come up with this cost structure. Other aspects, I've seen people create their goals on the call to action. So you can see here where in this particular case, they have the goals combined with what they're planning to raise. So the current raise is 2 million, and that could be that they're raising fund from investors. It could be that they're raising funds, loans from a venture loan. It doesn't necessarily have to be an investment. It could be that they're getting a loan from the bank as well. So this is very generic. They're not saying what we plan to give you. They're just saying this is what we're trying to raise, whether you have that full amount or part of that amount, and here are the goals. So they're listing the goals, what they plan to accomplish with this specific round of funding, and then the estimated burn rate is what they expect to be using per month. So they're trying to justify why do they need 2 million for this particular round. And then on the right hand side, they've listed how they plan to use the money. So mostly for salaries, new hires, product development, marketing activities, or other. So based on your project and the details and who you're talking to, you get to decide if you want to show them just the high level or if you want to go into a detailed plan. So it's really would depend on who you're talking to. Now, another way, I've seen some people where they've combined the ask use of fund with the contact us. So this is a simple slide where you can put on one side, what is it that you're seeking? What are the goals for this particular round, not necessarily for your entire project, the goal of how you're planning to use this funding. And then on the right, you have the contact slide. So really, there's no wrong or right way. You get to decide based on the context of your conversation, whether you're sending it as a PDF or whether you're speaking in person. Or congratulations, because now you know how your call to action can work on your pitch deck story. Because before you ask people to take any action, you need to be answering the most common questions that they might be thinking of. And creating that storyboard and following this 10-step storyboard can help you answer these questions. Now, you might not keep them in this specific order. You might shuffle things around depending on your audience, but now you have the main components of your pitch deck story. So you can see here how in part 1, we started by explaining how your solutions can satisfy a market need. We started with that need, showing them that there is a need, whether it's a project, it's a business, it's a product, it's a service. You have to let them know that they need this or the market needs this if they're investing. And the next section, you learned about how to explain your strategy and how to validate your solutions and provide proof that you and your team can get the job done. And then you get to the call to action. And so that's why in the last part, you get to show your final goals. You can show how everything now lines up. This is your future goal, and now you ask them, do you want to come and join me on this journey? And using that framework can give you a little bit more credibility, especially if you still don't have an established brand or anything functioning at the time. So if you're a startup, you need to have that structure. You need to be able to answer these questions. And as you build that credibility, as you have these case studies and testimonials, this conversation will become much easier for you. So really the tips that I can give you for this call to action slide is to adjust your call to action based on your audience and the relationship temperature. So if you're just meeting them, you don't want to be asking them for too much, maybe just start by contact us, book a call. You need to have someone on your team who's able to close that sale. Usually that would be the business development manager. They have these skills to close the sale. They have these skills to have that conversation. If you're asking for money, you might need to have your financing team on there. Your accountant could be there. You need someone who can close that financial agreement for you. It could be a lawyer or an accountant in that case. And another tip I would say is create follow-up opportunities. So if they don't take action now, most people don't take action right away, you need to give them that opportunity for a follow-up. So maybe if they don't invest now, ask them, can you book another meeting? So make that call to action dynamic based on what happened during the last interaction. That would be my tip for you. And once again, I would recommend you do a checklist, have that checklist so that you have these different slides ready, because you never know when you might might be needing the slide. So have a contact us, have one with different call to action, and depending on the conversation, you can mix and match and add a final call to action. So your action item for the action call to action slide really is to create a clear call to action for your audience so they know what you want them to do next. So create a different list for each audiences and create variations to fit different scenarios. So go ahead and I'll see you in the next video.